If you've been watching this channel, you know that I am a big proponent of ATGATT, or all of the gear, all of the time. Getting to this point has been an evolution for me. 10 years ago, I was wearing half helmets, short sleeve tees, and blue jeans. But after coming to my senses due to on-the-road experiences, I bought some of that expensive gear to protect myself from potential crashes, but also from the changing weather conditions of long-distance motorcycle travel. Needless to say, I have never looked back. Today, I wear full-face helmets, abrasion-resistant jackets, pants, boots, and gloves. However, I have not taken the next step and moved to a motorcycle airbag. But lately, I have been thinking, should I? Of course, many big-name YouTubers like Ryan F9, of course, I'm not in that class, well, they think that everybody should rip out their CE-rated armor and pads and replace them with an airbag. But still, I have not been convinced, at least up to this point. So I decided to take a deeper dive, looking at the reasons why I have not made the switch. When I first heard about airbags, my reaction was, seriously? If motorcycling is so dangerous that I need to wrap myself in a personal airbag, maybe what I should be asking myself is really, should I still be doing this? I mean, I have spent thousands of dollars on gear and even more on training classes, but now I'm being told that is not enough. Now I need air bladders and CO2 or argon inflation canisters. Well, motorcycling is supposed to be fun, and that just doesn't sound like fun to me. Next, I think about the kind of riding that I do. I'm not going to the track or riding off-road for a few hours at a time. I'm jumping on the bike and spending weeks on the road. I know. Anytime I ride, I'm at risk, and yes, that is true. But when you spend 30 to 60 days traveling day to day, you want something flexible, comfortable, and that still offers some degree of personal protection. Because of how I ride, the idea of wearing something that can weigh 2 to 3 kilograms or 4 to 6 pounds all day, every day for weeks at a time is not very appealing, especially when I'm wearing a hydration pack on top of that. Another concern for me is heat and airflow. At least the electronic version of motorcycle airbags are not waterproof and must be worn inside your jacket. They are designed to be worn with a base layer under the vest and then a jacket on top of that. This, of course, will impact the airflow and evaporation of sweat. Some say this is no big deal, while others I have talked to admit that it can get a little hot. Again, as a traveler, this is of concern to me. Another concern is having enough room for expansion of the airbag within my jackets. You typically need about 2 inches all the way around the circumference of your body for the expansion of the airbag. My AEROSTICH Darien jacket does have enough room for insulated layers, but I'm not sure if it could handle an airbag in addition. You could get around this by purchasing a vest that can be worn on the outside of your jacket, something like the Helate brand of airbags that operate with a tether rather than gyroscopes and accelerometers. But there are also issues with being hooked to the bike. I have a hard enough time remembering to unhook my heated gear, and there are questions about how quickly the tethered bags deploy in some instances. As with anything, there are trade-offs and many factors to consider. Now let's get into costs. Typically, these airbag jackets or vests run between $600 to $1,000. Some have subscriptions you need to maintain and others do not. Some require you to send the product back to the manufacturer in the event of discharge, and others allow you to inspect and repack the bag yourself, at least for the first 3 or 4 crashes. After that, it must be sent back for inspection. Even if you do not deploy the vest, Alpinestars wants you to send the airbag in every 3 years at a cost of about $300. They say the lifespan of a jacket or vest is about 10 years, even if it's never deployed. For a $1,000 airbag, that brings the minimum lifetime cost to about $1,900 or about $190 per year. Now, of course, if you crash a lot, the cost will be higher. And if you do crash a lot, well, maybe you really should be wearing that airbag. Now, personally, in the 19 years since I returned to motorcycling, I have only had one deployable get-off, and that was riding off-road. And given the nature of my crash, I'm not sure the airbag would have made much difference. For sure, a tethered system would have done nothing since I never left the bike. I know many of you are getting ready to tell me how the cost, heat, weight, need to carry extra gas canisters, and keeping the battery charged will be worth it if the airbag protects me in the event of a crash. Well, maybe that's true and maybe not. This brings us to the really big question: how much more protection above CE Level 1 and CE Level 2 pads do airbags offer? Airbags are now being required for MotoGP and many track day programs, and they are also increasingly being used for off-road races like the Dakar Rally. I have read that the Dakar is now reporting a decrease in serious injury and in particular collarbone breaks with riders that are using airbags. Now, there are also a plethora of anecdotal stories about riders who crashed and now will not ride without an airbag. But the truth is that there is very little in the way of data comparing the effectiveness of various levels of personal protection. I have even reached out to Alpinestars asking for this kind of data, but their internal policies will not allow them to share anything about testing or deployment of their products. Rather than help me out and give me some of this information, they referred me to the standard marketing videos and product manuals. They do claim a 90% reduction in transmitted force over CE Level 1 pads. Now, that is calculated by dropping a 5 kilogram weight from 1 meter and measuring the force that comes through the pad or airbag. Now, this is not really a good test of how well the airbag will protect you in a crash, at least as far as I'm concerned. To get an idea of what the real forces involved in a crash are like, I found a calculator by doing a little Googling, and that would let me put in my weight and speed of travel and then show me the forces that would be applied to my body. And let me tell you, it's pretty scary. At just 20 miles per hour, a 200-pound guy like me will generate 90,648 newtons of force as I slam into the side of a car. That is like being crushed by 20,372 pounds. The calculator has a big red box that says, "This crash may cause severe injury or death." Now, again, that is just going 20 miles per hour. So will an airbag lessen those forces? And my guess is yes, it will, but is it going to be enough to prevent serious injury? And the answer is, well, we just don't know. Now let's look at a couple of crash test videos put out by two of the major airbag manufacturers. First, Hellite offers this video as proof of the effectiveness of their product. Now notice that the rider first hits the car with their helmet, compressing their cervical spine, and then is ejected from the bike. The vest inflates while the rider is in midair, and then they tumble over the car and land in the seated position, most likely breaking their pelvis. The airbag never touches the car or the ground in this video. So how do they think this is showing the effectiveness of their airbag? Next, a video from Alpinestars. Again, the rider is ejected from the bike and immediately their head collides with the car. This time, the airbag does inflate quickly as compared to the tethered version, and as the rider comes to rest, the bag would help to protect them while impacting the ground. So in both of these cases, the rider's helmet strikes the roof of the car before the airbag can offer any protection. Are either of these crashes survivable? I was able to find one study that consisted of two parts. First, they strapped some dead bodies to the motorcycles and then launched them towards a car. Yep, that's what they did. And then also they reviewed 27 motorcycle accidents that involved airbags. Now, of course, 27 is a rather small number, but airbags are just now becoming more popular, and I'm sure that finding accident data is actually quite difficult. The study states that among the 27 persons involved in the accidents, 20 of them were injured and 7 remained uninjured. People who had no injuries corresponded to cases of loss of control without impact except with the ground or impact at low speeds, 10 to 20 kilometers per hour. Injuries were observed on the following segments of the body regions: 14 in the lower limbs, 12 in the upper limbs, and 6 at the trunk, thorax, abdomen, or vertebral column. So the conclusions of this study are as follows. The airbag jackets seem to provide limited protection from a threshold speed which can be estimated to an impact of around 30 to 40 kilometers per hour. That's 18 to 25 miles per hour. But these speeds differ with the impact configuration, that is, direct impact against an obstacle or ground fall. This level of protection can be considered as important since the impact of a human against an obstacle at this range of speed is particularly strong and concern high levels of energy. So not surprisingly, those riders who came off the bike and simply hit the ground and rolled or slid for a while did pretty well with the airbags on. Those that hit an obstacle, that is a car or a tree or something like that, well, they were more highly injured. Again, this is not surprising. We see similar patterns in things like the Berkeley study that was used to evaluate lane-splitting riders versus non-lane-splitting riders. They found that the riders who crashed while lane-splitting were less likely to have serious injuries because they were in that gap between the cars and not crashing directly into the cars. So while this study does say that airbags can help in lower impact crashes, that is between 18 and 25 miles an hour, it really doesn't answer the question of how much more protection, if any, does an airbag offer over just a regular set of CE Level 1 or CE Level 2 pads. And that's because there was no comparison done, so it still doesn't answer my question. So I guess this brings us back around to where we started at the beginning of this video. I don't know whether I should be going out and buying an airbag or not, because I can't really find enough data to determine whether it's going to make any reasonable difference for me, especially since I don't crash very often, if at all. In fact, I haven't crashed at all on the street in 19 years. Do I make it harder on myself while traveling to maybe prevent something that might happen? If I was doing a lot of track days, I would definitely have an airbag. Or if I was riding off-road, given how often most riders have get-offs, I would consider it. However, I would also ask if a set of CE Level 2 armor, like the one I'm wearing in this image, will do the trick without costing me $1,000 to purchase the jacket and $100 to replace an inflation canister every time I fail. Too bad Alpine Stars is not willing to give us more data to do a full comparison between the two options for personal protection, especially since one costs $300 and the other $1,000 just to get started. We all know that motorcycling comes with some risk. We also know that the things we can do to reduce that risk are limited. The study I mentioned in this video, as well as other investigations into the effectiveness of armor, show similar findings. As speed increases along with the force of impact to hard objects, there is little that can be done to prevent injury. If I would have had an airbag on my trip to Alaska that you have been watching in this video, I would have had to wear that vest over a base layer, insulating layer, and or a wind blocking layer. I would have also likely needed to buy a larger jacket to accommodate all of that stuff and still allow the airbag to expand, if needed. And of course, I would have had to carry an extra couple of canisters just in case. We all have to make up our own minds based on our situation, so do your own research. There is only what is right for you. And as always, ride safe and keep squeezing your lemon.